Some stories don't just reveal crimes. They expose how close danger really is. The first sign that something was terribly wrong didn't come from a person. It came from a number. At exactly 2:17 in the morning, inside a dimly lit cybersecurity monitoring room, a red alert flashed across a massive dashboard. Millions of data points streamed silently across the screens, but one transaction stood out like a flare in the dark. $6.48 million. The transfer had been split into smaller, encrypted segments, routed through multiple digital wallets, and then scattered across international blockchain networks within seconds. It was precise, surgical, professional, and it should never have happened. The company at the center of the storm, Nexavault Technologies, was known across the financial tech world for one thing: impenetrable security. Banks trusted them. Investment firms relied on them. Crypto exchanges paid millions to use their infrastructure. If Nexavault was breached, it wasn't just one company at risk. It was the entire system. Inside the operations floor, senior security analyst Daniel Mercer leaned closer to the screen, his reflection faint in the glow of moving code. "Run the trace again," he said quietly. A junior analyst typed quickly. The system processed the transaction's path. Encrypted, masked, fragmented. But then, something totally unexpected appeared. An internal authorization key. Daniel froze. The transfer hadn't come from outside. It came from inside the company. Within minutes, the emergency protocol was activated. Automated security locks began isolating servers. Digital access routes were temporarily restricted. By sunrise, Nexavault's executive conference room was filled with tension. CEO Laura Whitmore stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, her eyes fixed on the screen displaying the transaction log. "No external breach?" she asked. Daniel shook his head. "None. Whoever did this used a verified internal access signature." Silence fell over the room. Internal access meant trust. And trust meant betrayal. The company launched a quiet internal investigation. Public disclosure could cause panic across financial markets, so only a small group knew the truth. Every employee with high-level system access was flagged for review. 27 names appeared: engineers, security architects, blockchain specialists, and one of them stood out. Ethan Cole, 32 years old, senior backend developer. Known for being quiet, precise, and almost invisible, Ethan wasn't the type to draw attention. He rarely spoke during meetings. But his code was flawless. He had built key components of Nexavault's encrypted wallet infrastructure, which meant he knew exactly how to move money without triggering alarms. At first, investigators found nothing. Ethan's performance reviews were excellent. No financial distress, no disciplinary issues, no unusual activity. But Daniel Mercer wasn't convinced. "Perfect records don't exist," he muttered one evening. He started analyzing something most investigators overlook: timing patterns, login habits, code submission times, system access frequency. And slowly, a pattern emerged. Ethan Cole often logged into secure systems late at night, but on 3 specific dates, his access windows were unusually short. Short, but extremely targeted. Those dates aligned perfectly with the fragmented crypto transfers. That wasn't a coincidence. That was control. The company quietly contacted federal financial cybercrime investigators. Special Agent Marcus Hale joined the case. Marcus had spent over a decade tracking digital fraud networks. He studied Ethan's profile. No flashy purchases, Marcus noted. No sudden lifestyle change. Daniel nodded. "That's what makes it strange." Marcus looked at the transaction structure again. "This isn't impulse theft. This is engineered." Investigators began a deep forensic audit of Ethan's system activity, examining deleted logs and encrypted backups. At first, everything appeared clean. Too clean. Then, they found it. Hidden inside an archived development folder was a script. At first glance, it looked harmless. But when analysts executed it in a controlled environment, the room fell silent. The program quietly mirrored transaction authentication keys without triggering any security alerts. Daniel stared at the output. "This isn't testing code," he said. Marcus replied calmly, "No, this is extraction code." And the file metadata showed exactly who created it: Ethan Cole. The investigation immediately escalated. Surveillance revealed a routine life. He lived alone. He worked regular hours. He visited the same coffee shop each morning. But experienced investigators knew the most dangerous cyber criminals rarely looked dangerous. 3 days later, something changed. At 11:42 p.m., system monitors detected another attempted transaction using the same mirrored authorization pattern. The access originated from a remote connection tied to Ethan's credentials. Marcus immediately contacted the field team. "Move in," he said. Agents arrived at Ethan's apartment within minutes. Lights were on. His car was parked outside. But when they knocked, no one answered. The building manager unlocked the door. Inside, the apartment looked normal. Organized, quiet. Laptop on the desk. Coffee mug half full. Phone charging near the window. But Ethan Cole was gone. Then investigators noticed something chilling. The laptop screen was still active. On the screen was an open digital wallet interface, showing a transfer process mid-execution. Marcus stepped closer. The transaction wasn't sending money out. It was receiving funds from multiple encrypted wallets. Millions of dollars flowing back into one destination account. But that wasn't the shocking part. The destination wallet wasn't registered to Ethan Cole. It belonged to someone else. Someone inside NexaVault. And when investigators traced the account ownership, the name that appeared changed everything. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. The name on the destination wallet didn't make sense. Marcus Hale stared at the screen, reading it twice to be certain the system hadn't made an error. Laura Whitmore, the CEO of NexaVault Technologies. For several seconds, no one in the room spoke. The quiet hum of the laptop fan felt louder than it should have. Daniel Mercer broke the silence first. "That has to be spoofed. Someone is masking the ownership." Marcus didn't respond immediately. He leaned closer, scanning the wallet registry data, authentication layers, and blockchain verification logs. No masking, no redirection, no spoofing. The wallet had been created using verified corporate identity credentials, executive-level authorization, which meant only one thing. Either someone had stolen Laura Whitmore's digital identity at the highest security level, or she was connected to the transfers. Marcus stood upright. "We don't assume anything yet," he said calmly. But this just became a very different investigation. The next morning, NexaVault's headquarters looked the same as always: glass walls, polished floors, and employees moving between departments with quiet focus. But behind the scenes, federal investigators were already inside the building. The approach had to be careful. If Laura Whitmore was involved, confronting her without proof could trigger legal complications or cause digital evidence to disappear. Marcus and Daniel entered a secure conference room where Laura was already waiting. She looked composed, professional, and slightly confused. "I was told there's been another security issue," she said. Marcus placed a printed transaction sheet on the table. "We need clarification on a wallet connected to your executive credentials." Laura glanced down. Her expression changed instantly. Confusion shifted to something sharper. Concern. "I've never seen this wallet before." Marcus watched her closely. Years of interrogation experience had taught him to notice microreactions, small emotional shifts people couldn't control. Laura didn't look defensive. She looked genuinely shocked. Daniel leaned forward. "The wallet was created using executive-level authentication. That requires your direct authorization." Laura shook her head. "That's not possible. Those keys are stored offline. Only I have access." Marcus asked quietly, "Has anyone ever requested temporary access to your authentication environment? Maintenance, testing, upgrades?" Laura paused. Then something clicked. Her eyes widened slightly. 6 months ago," she said slowly, "during a back-end security upgrade, one of the senior developers requested supervised access to verify encryption integration." Marcus didn't need to ask the next question. They both already knew the answer. "Who?" he asked. Laura hesitated for only a moment. "Ethan Cole." The room fell silent again. The investigation suddenly shifted direction. This wasn't just a theft. It was a long-term plan. Marcus began reconstructing the timeline. 6 months earlier, Ethan had requested temporary access under the pretext of improving encryption compatibility. That request had been approved because Ethan was trusted and because the system required his technical expertise. But during that short window of access, Ethan could have done something almost invisible. He could have duplicated fragments of Laura's executive authentication signature. Not enough to trigger alerts, not enough to grant direct control, but enough to create a shadow authorization layer. A hidden identity, a digital ghost. Daniel immediately returned to the security lab to re-examine the mirrored extraction script found earlier. This time, he looked at it differently, not as a theft tool, but as a staging mechanism. And then he saw it. The script didn't just copy authorization keys. It selectively combined fragments from multiple credentials. That meant Ethan hadn't just copied Laura's identity. He had blended it with system-level verification layers, creating something investigators rarely encounter: a synthetic executive authorization. Marcus leaned against the desk. He didn't just steal money, he said quietly. He built a backdoor using trust itself. But one question still remained. If Ethan had engineered everything so carefully, why was the money suddenly being transferred back? The answer came faster than expected. Later that afternoon, a digital forensic alert triggered across the monitoring system. One of the previously flagged crypto wallets had just activated, not to move funds, but to log a location trace. Daniel quickly isolated the metadata. The wallet had connected briefly to a public internet network, a cafe hotspot, 22 minutes from Nexavault headquarters. Marcus immediately contacted the field team. "Don't approach aggressively," he instructed. "We don't know if he's alone." When agents arrived at the cafe, they scanned the room carefully. People sat quietly with laptops, coffee cups, and headphones. Normal. Routine. But near the back corner, one seat stood empty. On the table sat a closed laptop, still warm. Next to it, an envelope. Agents secured the device immediately and opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Printed. No handwriting. No fingerprints. Just one sentence. "I didn't take the money." Marcus read the message twice. Then he looked at the laptop. Forensic technicians quickly opened the device using secure protocols. The system booted into a restricted environment, one designed to prevent external tracking. But something else stood out. A video file. Recently recorded. Marcus pressed play. Ethan Cole appeared on screen. He looked tired, nervous, but focused. "I know you're watching this," Ethan began. "By now, you've traced the wallets and connected my access logs. That was inevitable." He paused, glancing off camera as if listening for something. "I didn't steal the money," he continued. "I found the vulnerability while working on the encryption upgrade. At first, I thought it was a system flaw, but then I realized something worse." Marcus leaned closer to the screen. Ethan continued. "The vulnerability wasn't accidental. It was built deliberately, layered so deeply into the architecture that it could only be triggered by someone who understood the entire system." Daniel whispered, "That's impossible." But Ethan kept speaking. "I tried to report it internally. Every time I got close, the access logs changed. Files disappeared. Someone didn't want this discovered." Ethan's voice lowered. "So I copied the authorization fragments myself. I built a mirror system to track the hidden transactions." Marcus felt the tension rising. "Then I saw where the money was going." Ethan looked directly into the camera. "And that's when I realized I wasn't the one being investigated." The screen suddenly glitched. The video flickered, then cut to black. For several seconds, no one spoke. Marcus slowly exhaled. This just turned into something much bigger. Daniel nodded. "If he's telling the truth, then someone else built the theft system first." Marcus closed the laptop. And now Ethan knows who. But the most troubling detail wasn't the video. It was the timing. The cafe security footage revealed Ethan had left only 4 minutes before agents arrived, which meant one thing. He knew they were coming. And that meant someone else was watching the investigation. Someone with access. Someone powerful enough to stay invisible. But the next discovery was even more alarming. Because when forensic analysts traced the remaining encrypted wallet routes, they found a final transaction scheduled to execute automatically in less than 24 hours. A transaction large enough to drain nearly everything left inside Nexavault's secured digital reserves. And whoever controlled it had just locked investigators out. The countdown had already begun. Inside the digital forensics lab, a large screen displayed the scheduled transaction clock ticking down in cold, precise numbers. 23:41:18. 23:41:17. 23:41:16. Every second brought Nexavault closer to a catastrophic loss. Marcus Hale stood with his arms folded, watching the timer as analysts worked rapidly across multiple terminals. The room was filled with tension, keyboard clicks, whispered technical exchanges, and the constant hum of cooling systems struggling to keep pace with the heat of nonstop processing. Daniel Mercer leaned forward, scanning encrypted pathways. They've locked the transaction behind multi-layer routing, he said. This isn't just blockchain obfuscation, it's adaptive masking. Every time we trace one node, it shifts to another. Marcus didn't look away from the screen, meaning whoever built this expected interference. Marcus turned. So we're not just dealing with theft. Daniel shook his head slowly. We're dealing with architecture. Across the room, another analyst raised her voice. We found something. All eyes turned. On her screen was a layered system diagram, an internal map of NexaVault's original encryption framework. But something didn't match. There was a hidden structure buried beneath the official architecture. A secondary transaction pipeline. Older than Ethan's code. Much older. Marcus stepped closer. How old? The analyst zoomed in on timestamp metadata. 7 years. The room went quiet. 7 years meant the vulnerability wasn't recent. It existed long before Ethan Cole joined NexaVault, which meant one thing. Someone had designed it from the beginning. Daniel's voice lowered. This wasn't a hack. It was a feature. Marcus felt the realization settle heavily. A secret financial backdoor embedded inside one of the most trusted crypto security companies in the world. But one question still remained. Who built it? The answer came from an unexpected direction. Laura Whitmore entered the room, her expression serious. I need to show you something, she said. She placed an archived corporate file onto the central display. Before I became CEO, she continued, NexaVault was led by its original founder, Adrian Keller. Marcus studied the name. Where is he now? Laura hesitated. He stepped down 3 years ago. Officially, he retired after selling most of his shares. Daniel frowned. Officially, Laura nodded slowly. But he still retained back-end advisory access to system infrastructure. He insisted on it when the company expanded internationally. Marcus immediately understood. Advisory access, legacy privileges, permanent system influence. Daniel quickly searched internal logs. There it was, hidden among archived permissions. Adrian Keller still possessed dormant system-level authorization. Inactive, but not removed. Marcus spoke quietly. If the backdoor is 7 years old, and he designed the original encryption architecture, no one needed to finish the sentence. The truth was forming, but they still needed proof. Daniel returned to Ethan's abandoned laptop. The video had cut off abruptly, but forensic recovery tools often pulled fragments from corrupted files. After several minutes, partial data began reconstructing. The screen flickered, then the video resumed. Ethan appeared again, this time looking more urgent. If anything happens to me, he said, check the legacy root permissions. The video glitched again, but this time stabilized. I traced the hidden transaction routing to one access signature. It's archived, buried inside older system layers. Ethan leaned closer to the camera. The name tied to it is, the video froze. Corruption. Static. Then silence. Daniel ran recovery tools again. Nothing. The remaining data was gone. But they didn't need it anymore. Marcus turned toward Laura. Adrian Keller. Laura slowly nodded. Hours later, investigators secured an international financial monitoring request. If Keller was still operating the hidden pipeline, the upcoming automated transfer would eventually route through one of his offshore control structures. The clock continued counting down. 02:13:44. Time was slipping away. Then, another alert triggered. Daniel's screen flashed. We have movement. A hidden authorization key had activated, not to execute the transaction, but to modify routing layers. Marcus leaned in. Location. Daniel traced the metadata. Private encrypted network, but there's a physical access signature attached. He zoomed in, then stopped. That's impossible. Marcus looked at him. What? Daniel turned the screen. The access point location appeared clearly. Inside NexaVault headquarters. The room went silent. Someone inside the building was executing the final stage. Security teams immediately locked down the facility. Elevators halted. Entry points sealed. Internal cameras activated across every corridor. Marcus and Daniel moved quickly toward the executive infrastructure floor, where legacy system hardware was stored. As they approached the restricted access hallway, one detail stood out immediately. The door was already open. Inside, soft light from multiple monitors illuminated the room. And standing in front of the central terminal was Laura Whitmore. Marcus stopped. For a moment, no one spoke. Laura didn't turn around immediately. Her hands rested calmly on the keyboard. The transaction countdown reflected across the glass surface of the monitor. 00:09:12. Then she spoke. I wondered how long it would take. Marcus stepped forward slowly. Laura, step away from the system. She finally turned. There was no panic in her eyes, only quiet acceptance. I didn't build the backdoor, she said. Adrian did. Years ago. Marcus remained silent. Laura continued. When I became CEO, I discovered it during an internal audit. At first, I thought it was an error. But then I saw the transactions. Daniel felt the tension rising. Laura's voice softened. He was siphoning small amounts across multiple networks. Nothing large enough to trigger alerts. But over time, it became millions. Marcus asked carefully, why didn't you report it? Laura gave a faint, exhausted smile. Because by the time I found it, I realized something else. Marcus watched her closely. Laura continued. He wasn't the only one benefiting. The room fell still. Marcus understood. Corporate investors, private stakeholders, silent partners, people powerful enough to destroy the company and her career if the truth surfaced. So you covered it, Marcus said quietly. Laura shook her head. No, I contained it. She glanced at the screen. I froze the routing structure and began quietly rebuilding the system architecture. But Adrian realized what I was doing. Daniel stepped closer. That's when Ethan found the vulnerability. Laura nodded. He wasn't supposed to. But when he did, Adrian activated the final transfer to drain everything before the system update erased his access permanently. Marcus looked at the timer. 00:04:03. Then why are you here now? Laura exhaled slowly. Because Ethan contacted me. Both Marcus and Daniel froze. Laura continued. He figured out what was happening. He thought I was involved at first, but when I showed him the audit data, he understood. Marcus's voice sharpened. Where is he? Laura's expression tightened. Safe. Then she stepped away from the keyboard. I delayed the final transfer long enough for you to trace it. Marcus immediately moved forward, taking control of the terminal. Daniel worked beside him, rapidly isolating the legacy authorization layer. 3 minutes later, the automated transfer was permanently disabled. The hidden pipeline, 7 years in the making, was gone. Silence filled the room. It was over. Weeks later, international investigators confirmed the full financial trail. Adrian Keller was arrested overseas after attempting to access secondary offshore accounts connected to the hidden transactions. The case exploded across global financial networks. Corporate trust, digital security, executive accountability. Everything was questioned. And Ethan Cole, he eventually came forward, providing complete forensic documentation that helped dismantle the remaining hidden structures. All charges against him were dropped. But one detail never appeared in the headlines. Marcus stood months later outside Nexavault headquarters, watching employees move in and out of the building as if nothing had ever happened. Daniel joined him. Strange how quickly the world moves on. Marcus nodded. Most people only see the crime. Daniel glanced toward the glass towers, not the system behind it. Marcus looked at the skyline. Because the truth was deeper than anyone realized. The backdoor hadn't been built overnight. It had existed for years, hidden behind trust, authority, and silence. And cases like this rarely end completely. They only change form. Somewhere else. In another system. Behind another secure network. Another hidden door might already exist. Waiting. If this story kept you watching until the end, then you already know, some truths don't disappear, they just stay hidden. Subscribe, because the next case might be even closer than anyone expects.